Exactly. Dada.
Welcome to the BTS Presents show.
Hi, I'm Candace Bradfield, broker and owner of Bradfield & Associates and past president of our Santa Cruz County Association of Realtors. I want to thank you for joining BTS Presents. We're going to be talking about the Santa Cruz County and Silicon Valley real estate.
Welcome back. I'm joined today by three of our more interesting local real estate professionals. I have on the far left CB Go, who is helping us celebrate the recent passage of Chinese New Year. So
That means many prosperity to you, and
if I say
congratulations.
Gong Hai Fa Choi, that would be I was in
That would be Cantonese.
Cantonese. Okay,
Yes.
that's great clarification. So if you can tell us a little bit more clarification on your business model, what you do in real estate, that'd be great.
Well, my name is CB. I love what I do. I'm the only one in the city of Santa Cruz who speaks fluent in both Mandarin and Cantonese.
That's a huge edge.
Yes.
I understand you're a member of an organization.
Aria. I've been joining Aria about 3 years ago, so I became the board member actually started last year. So I just really love the dynamic of it. They do a lot of education. They also is an advocate for the real estate world. They go to the White House. Many years ago, I don't know if you guys know, in the census, it doesn't say Asian. So we actually turned it around. Now we have Asian. Before it was others. So all Chinese, Vietnamese, any Asian people actually fall into the category as others.
And so it's not just Chinese, would it be Japanese as well?
Now at least we have Asian
Just
in the
Asian.
census. Yes, we have
Fascinating.
Asian.
So Asian Real Estate Association, and your role now is board member.
Correct.
And so what do you help facilitate with that?
Well, I like them so much. When they first asked me to join, I felt I couldn't say no. But I hope actually one day today we have a few all real estate people here. Maybe one day we can have a chapter in Santa Cruz as well too. That's what I'm actually hoping to happen, because at the organization, in my opinion, I just felt it's very high quality and I learned a lot. And in terms of real estate, I think it's going to be more and more global. Because when I was marketing properties over here, I actually had people fly in from China to come and see the property.
And it helps to have somebody who can speak their dialect, their language. And,
Yes.
and I imagine there's a thought process that goes along. I do speak haltingly several other languages, and I find with the food, with the language, suddenly it's not just about the food and the language, but you do start to think a little bit differently. So understanding how business customs are done, I imagine that gives you a huge edge as a real estate professional locally.
It helps. I feel I become the Chinese advocate now. A lot of times people contact me because I'm Chinese and I can speak the language, because buying a property is not a small decisions, and it's exhausting enough even if you speak the language. And imagine you have to learn all the real estate terms in a new country at the same time, try to speak a different language. It's actually a very exhausting experience.
And then, as
so
I understand
it helps a little bit to speak the same language.
Well, there are limits as well as far as bringing money out of the mainland, and there are local banks that are set up. So are you helping facilitate those banks being plugged in with the investors and finding ways to
I
make
have
it
a few
happen?
lenders that I use that can facilitate buyers from overseas, so they don't have to have this SSN number. They don't have to live locally here. So there's a few people I use for those particular loans.
That's fascinating. So and you're doing both residential and commercial?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Okay. And what areas are you covering?
I try to cover Santa Cruz as much as possible. I do. Actually, I've been up to as north as Pantages Bay and as south as Morgan Hill. And lately I've been working on a property in Scotts Valley, building senior housing, which I was so hoping that would go, because if my client got approved for the senior housing, that will bring in another 75 residents.
That's
for
nice.
the for the community. However, I'm sad to report they felt the city was not easy to work with. They wanted to pull it off.
Well, and that ties into I think a long-standing position shared by one of my other panelists here, Rosemary McNair, who's been very active in local political policy and such. Do you want to speak a little bit as far as how the political climate frames your identity as a professional and as somebody who cares?
I have been sort of connected, glued, and attached to everything having to do with government issues because I believed when I first came here to Santa Cruz from San Jose, there was a prevalence of knowledge of what was going on in the county ordinances, city ordinances, and so forth. But there didn't seem to be that as the case in 1976 here in Santa Cruz. So I was an anomaly because I was going down to the city council or the city and checking things out, looking at the council meetings and the board of supervisors in the county and water boards, and I at one point was known as the septic queen because we were dealing with ABA 885, which was stuff having to do with septic systems being standardized throughout the entire state.
I'm on that panel now.
Yeah, we've stayed on that
But it's
thing. We're
interesting,
still on the
yeah.
toilet committee here.
And at one point, I think the Board of Realtors actually said, well, what the heck, she's down there all the time, why don't we give her a job? And so you were writing the Real Estate Watch?
I did. I
believe.
wrote the Real Estate Watch, which was a monthly thing that came out that the realtors got, and then it sort of spread around to everybody. I still have those old watches, and what would be fun is to actually pull up some of the projects that didn't go. When I first moved here,
Like this current, well, see,
and I thought all about them.
75 seniors that no longer have a place to
It
live.
doesn't happen because of the difficulties of getting it through. The costs are exorbitant. And CEQA, which is California Environmental Quality Act, adds just layers more stuff that you have to do. But I remember on Old San Jose Road, where the Imogene Cummings Park is, Blue Ball Park, as
Park, as they
everybody
call
calls it. That was going to have a huge amount of condos and development that was going to go in there. I mean, I think it was, at one point it was well over 300. Might be,
Well, and they were
might
going
have
to
been
bring,
like 300 or 400 or 500.
they were going to bring 41st all the way up and
They were going
around.
to bring 41st
Yeah.
because and when there was the earthquake in '89, the end of Old San Jose Road, you were blocked where we lived, up Soquel Creek. And we had to, finally they sort of inched us through the rubble and everything else. But the idea was that instead of 41st Avenue T-boning at the end where it is now and all that development of shopping centers were, they were going to bring that all the way around and curl around by the high school and down up Old
And I
San
heard
Jose
there was an
Road.
Ohlone Indian burial ground discovered there or something
Exactly.
like that.
I mean, there
Okay.
were
So,
many different.
long story short, Rosemary has seen it all, and if you want an amazing
Historical stuff.
resource on not making the same mistakes or giving you a good idea of why that good idea you've got may not work, or maybe you surprise when you've got an actual one that might work, which would help our housing crisis.
And I have to tell you something very interesting about this. I asked Tom Burns, who was the planning director at the time, to make sure that it was okay that I wrote what I wrote, because the housing that we thought was going to be there turned into a park. And somehow or another, it was quite interesting that housing money was more in there than park money, but no housing got built.
That is.
And that actually did happen.
And how's all this knowledge framed your identity as a professional? And because you're very well respected, anytime I see a listing with your name on it, I think, okay, well, this one's being done right.
Well, I don't know if it has anything to do with, just a desire to know what's going on, because what if you sold an apartment complex, a fourplex or something, in the city of Santa Cruz, say, while this is all going on with this moratorium thing that they have on the rent increases and so forth.
And God forbid,
and
the
you sold
buyers
it to
didn't
some
know.
guy who came in from Texas.
Yeah.
And then they closed escrow and said, what do you mean it's going to be rent control here? What do you mean there's this moratorium going
And
on?
suddenly they're blaming you, but not you because you knew and you told them.
Right, and
I
there
love
are
that.
other issues that come up all the time that
Yeah.
people don't know. Like, for example, and Linda and I were talking about this just the other day, there is an ordinance in the city of Santa Cruz well before the rent control situation came to the fore that says that you must give 10 days notice to any tenant residing in the city of Santa Cruz before you even put pen to paper to list the property. You cannot list the
Yep.
property until you give them that 10 days notice. And sometimes people don't know that, and the tenants know, so they will go after you if you don't follow
Good to
the
know.
rules.
So on my left, I have Linda Chatton, longtime local property manager, also very well respected. So I guess I turn the same question to you. What is it that's become your identity? Because we started out in this profession, we didn't know where we were going. We all just had this real estate license, and suddenly your personality and your attention to certain things frames. So how would you characterize your business model? Is it based in politics? Is it more about social advocacy? Is it connecting people? It's property management's it's a tough business. Not everybody is able to do it as well.
Yeah, not everybody is able to do property management, and I am a little bit different. I'm originally from Boston, came to Santa Cruz in 2005. I come from a healthcare finance background, and moved to Santa Cruz and decided that I wanted to take up a profession that I always had a passion for, and that was in real estate and property management. I started with my own properties right when I graduated from college. And when I moved to Santa Cruz, I started with my two other partners, CIF Property Management, and we are in Capitola. We manage both commercial and residential properties from Watsonville to Scotts Valley. And it's going to be a very interesting time for property managers relative to the rent control ordinances that were passed last week, the two on just cause
Well, it was the
eviction.
freeze, right? They
The
were-
freeze,
yeah.
right, the 2% freeze and the just cause ordinance. And there's a lot of navigation that needs to take place.
Well, there's huge penalties, I understand, for non-compliance.
Right,
And so
so-
having a good property manager who knows these things could save you a lot more money than the cost.
And I have a number of owners who purchased property in Santa Cruz with the intention of retiring here. So a couple of them are in the East Coast, planning on moving to Santa Cruz this year, and now the things have changed.
With the just cause
with the
eviction rules, right.
Right. Things have changed for them. They didn't anticipate that there would be requirements that they would have to meet in order to get back into their properties. And so I've been working with them, educating them, and making sure that I produce and issue the correct paperwork, so we are in compliance with the two ordinances that were passed last week.
I think this ties into, it's so much more than just being a realtor. Suddenly become, you're also a member of the community. You have an affirmative fiduciary duty to your clients, and then you have relationships with tenants as well. I mean, imagine it's good to be both loved and feared, I would imagine, as a property manager. But to navigate those relationships and be the person in between, can you speak a little bit as to what the experience of that is like for you?
I see it from both sides. If I have a listing, I will have calls from people that are moving into the area, starting a new job. I will have people calling me who may be on the Section 8 program who are looking for housing. I have students that are here for the first time looking for housing as well. And I have families who have been issued notices because either somebody wants to come back in and live in the property that they're currently living in, or the owner would like to put that property on the market for sale. So now they've been given a 30 or 60-day notice, and they're looking for a place to live. So I'm seeing 4 competing parties for that one property, and it's difficult.
That's a tough thing to juggle.
It's
because
very, very difficult
you're creating a
to juggle.
relationship there.
And as a property manager, I have ethical guidelines that I need to meet, fair housing guidelines, and looking and accepting applications and running the numbers and looking at the background and verifying those applications. So there's a certain process that I need to
maintain.
Not to mention juggling vendors and all that side of things, the operational side of things too.
Exactly, and that's what a good property manager would do. They take their personal aspects of evaluating a situation, and they really look at the overall picture of who's really applying for the property and what the demographics look like, and present the information to the owner and have the owner make the final decision. So there is a lot of juggling that needs to take place.
Well, it's nice to, I mean, each of you occupies a unique facet of the local real estate, the local real estate professionals. I, myself have never been so disciplined to specialize in one thing. So, call it something between a hybrid and a unicorn, but I'll handle anything from a commercial piece to mobile home, whatever the need is. My fascination and my interest is really a human interest, and then you plug them in. So if you have a human that wants to invest in apartments, or you have another person who wants to buy a business, what it resulted in for me at least is to set up different divisions within my company and then get that in the hands of somebody who knows what they're doing. So we have a membership in CAA, which you guys are members of as well. And I'll run into Rosemary McNair on any number of things. You're one of the few local agents who also handles business opportunities from time to time. I've carved out a bit of a niche for that. And then CB is going into pretty much wherever the need is, and with a real focus on making it accessible to the Asian, the infusion of Asian capital that's happening here. Do you have any statistics to share in terms of the numbers of investors that are coming over from China?
Lately, I haven't had the latest one, but I think in the Bay Area, it's over 25% are international buyers.
And a lot of those are all cash.
A lot of them are cash.
But not exactly cash, because you can't bring all the cash out of the mainland. I'm still fascinated by that, because I haven't personally handled one of those, but I understand they have these banks. If you want to name a couple of banks and how that process happens, I think that would be enlightening for many of us.
The government has a lot of restrictions on how much you can move the money.
I've heard 50,000 in blocks, or
actually $10,000
Oh, wow.
per person. Yes,
Wow.
so it's a lot harder now. However, people find ways to do it, and
Okay,
yes.
so we can't
Are
speak
they
publicly,
doing-
but if you want to speak about it, CB may know a person. You had a question on that?
I was just going to ask if they create LLCs or something like that to, accommodate a great number of people who want to gather together and buy something.
Most of my clients that I work with, each property they buy, they seem to put it under LLC. For the Chinese people, I actually haven't seen it as many. They, like a lot of time, they put in some of them actually will come to me and say they wanted to get a loan, which is possibility to get a loan. However, the complication make them decide to go cash. A lot of time, they just find their way and they put all cash.
And the apartment buyers I've dealt with, the Chinese apartment buyers, I've noticed family trusts more common amongst the buyers that I've dealt with. So that's fascinating. Do you manage for any Chinese nationals or Chinese entities?
I do not. No, I have Chinese tenants at the university that come in and would like to rent in. There's usually a number of people that are coming together for that. But that's about it.
So as a property manager, let's talk about maintenance these days, because part of the housing crisis means that prices of housing have gone up, but so has the price of a lot of the vendors. So how are you navigating those waters?
Well, that's somewhat difficult for owners to understand, especially those who own properties in Santa Cruz but live outside of Santa Cruz and San Jose and over what we call over the hill. And in vendors over the hill, there's again, supply and demand, a higher supply of vendors, so there's a more competitive price there.
Can you get them to work over here?
No. And particularly, there are some times I will have problems where owners will have like a First American Title or
home
company,
warranties?
a home warranty company,
that will use a vendor from over the hill to come and take care of a plumbing issue. Well, that takes 2 or 3 days for them to schedule it and then have someone call back and handle the
If you
problem.
got a plumbing issue, that's not going to wait 2 days.
Not at all. So I end up getting on the phone with the warranty company and demand that they use a plumber from Santa Cruz because, we just can't wait that long. So there is some
So an element of advocacy.
a number of, it's a little bit of navigation in order to make that work, but it's the pricing structure that most people have concern with, and I have to explain to them that the prices here, just because of the nature of the location, the prices are higher than those over there.
And you're pretty hands-on. I mean, if I remember right, you actually manage a few properties for your clients.
I did in the past,
okay.
but I don't do property management anymore. I just had a lot of property that I owned myself and managed. But one of the things, when I came here from San Jose, which is, I worked over there and did multi-residential and development quite extensively. But when you come to Santa Cruz, it was so growth controlled entirely in the county and the cities all across the board. Scotts Valley was a little freer, but not that much. And so we did build a four residences on the west side on Miramar, called Miramar Cottages. And we got them completed and ready to put on the market at the end of '89, right when the earthquake happened. So we ended up holding them, which was fine. We rented them, the 4 residences, and then later with my partner, who was Larry Favor, he ended up buying us out, and my husband and I bought another property. So,
And does he still own those?
Larry owns only one of the houses, and he resides in it.
That one house is probably worth more than the other all put together back in '89.
It's true. I think the whole project at that time, I don't recall exactly what we were trying to price them at, but I think it was around in the 3s maybe.
And today?
And today, we'd probably be looking at least 800 probably for each one of them. They were
So from 300 to
850 or
24. 2.4 million basically.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because in another segment we talked about skyrocketing rents, and I raised the fact that time and time again, if you look at housing prices, I wonder if anybody would ever propose housing price control. I mean, it sounds silly, but it strikes me as silly what's happened with rent control. When you look at precedent like what's happened in the Bay Area, they have proportionately more homelessness in San Francisco. They have 7,500 documented homeless. They have people literally. They have the Target in San Francisco literally has to lock up the tents because the homeless are stealing the tents so they can go out on the sidewalks. So, I mean...
Well, I always ask the question and to everyone, do you know of any business whereby it is controlled and they have to give away a portion of their investment or their money? Can you go to a grocery store and get you walk in, you pay for your groceries, and then you get your rent-controlled stipend or something.
I guess food stamps would be the closest thing.
Food stamps is a government thing that they provide to people who can't afford it.
Well, and then there's Section 8. What's the waiting list for Section 8 running right now? I heard at one point it was up to 25,000 people or something like that.
I don't know, but there's just a long list, and that list is shrinking as far as the housing that they have available.
So what's the length of time somebody would be on a Section 8 voucher waiting?
It's I don't know the exact years, but it's a long time.
It's a matter of years. It's not months.
Sure. Yeah.
So which comes back to the point you make, and Rosemary and I are going to make a bumper sticker. It's the supply, stupid. Basically, you heard it here first.
Yeah.
It really is. We have a supply issue.
We have a supply issue, and there's no doubt about it. And I'm saying that when I say no other business is actually having to chop off the price of whatever they're selling, except for developers and real estate and housing. That's the only one. I mean, if it's a furniture store, you don't buy a couch and then have a chair thrown in. You know what I'm saying? I'm trying to say it's the only thing that I know of that sort of gets attacked for having high prices.
For having a free
by which it was controlled by everybody that was NIMBY, not in my backyard.
Well, now they have Yes in My Backyard.
Yeah, they got
So
the
there's
NIMBY
that
guys
too.
that are yelling now, but they weren't yelling when all this was going on.
So in the midst of that, here we are, real estate professionals trying to navigate those things. It's not lost, I think, on anybody watching that, you basically have 4 different humans, 4 different, completely different ways of doing things. And it becomes a personal choice sometimes, who you want to do business with. I think the important thing is just getting a sense of how each person has molded themselves and, the kinds of unique needs that they can fulfill for a client. So I think just in concluding here, if we could each go around the panel and just, if you want to talk about any current projects that you're working on, what's your current focus, or things that you think people might find interesting?
I have a project that is very exciting to me right now. I have 15 townhouses that we just submitted a few weeks ago. So hopefully that
So
can
there's that
approve.
development thing again.
Yes, it's a development. So it's a few blocks away by the ocean, and the 3rd floor will have ocean view. We were actually hoping to have more units, but they approved for 15, which is still a blessing. So that will bring in another 15 homes to Santa Cruz.
Are any of those going to have to be affordable?
Yes. Actually 4 of them.
4 of them
Yeah,
out of 15.
Yes,
There's
so we are
usually
having
25%.
discussions now how we do
And
that.
15 is, it
That's-
should be 15%, I think, is what they.
15%.
Yes.
Yes. However, we were trying to work with church and some non-profit organizations,
Yeah.
try to allocate 2 of them to be off-site, or maybe some rental units. So we'll have discussions going back and forward right
That's
now.
a great project. Any current focus for you? Do you have any large
I
commercial
can-
spaces you're trying to fill, or?
Well, one thing I just wanted to mention is I do contribute my time to an organization called Families in Transition, and they provide housing for those that are on the verge of homelessness. And so I try to give back to the community my expertise and time to help those in those less fortunate to be able to find housing so easily.
And your current focus?
I probably, like you, am sort of a unicorn and delve into all different kinds of things, from mobile homes to multi-residential to development if I could. Love to do some development, but it doesn't pan out that easily. It's a time-consuming, time-constraining thing. So, yeah.
Well, it's interesting when you handle the different things, you realize how they go together. So very often, it's all about networking. So you've got, I actually run a real estate investment fund, and I was approached by an apartment buyer who said he's working for a national organization who looks for specifically low-income housing, but they don't want to develop it, they want it in place. And so wearing that hat, it took me a day till I realized, hey, wait a second, this fund just, we have a property in escrow in Fresno that we're selling to a low-income housing developer who's building 90 units. So I'm introducing those 2 parties to see if there can be something there. So I think it's something that we, particularly the unicorns, the independents of the world, it's fascinating when I get to see, okay, this restaurant owner's son wants to buy a house, and it's nice to be able to address all those needs and then see how the cross-pollination happens there. And I imagine as a property manager, you have both landlords who handle commercial, but they also have you handle their residential, and it's nice for them to not have to call 2 different people. For me, it was just, I ran out of people that I thought, well, they would do a good job, or part of it's just, I like to be involved. I think that's the biggest thing, is just really enjoying the process, enjoying the people, and I get a kick out of it if I'm able to sell the little mobile home as much as if you sell the giant apartment complex, because sometimes that thing means a lot more to those people.
It's fun.
It is fun.
To cross all those paths
Yes.
and meet. That is one thing that's so interesting. Linda and I were talking about it. Real estate gives us everything.
So thank you for joining us. Come back and join us sometime in the future for a future segment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.